Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all here today. I hope you're enjoying yourselves. I'd like to introduce to you today Scott Morrison, the CTO of Layer 7 Technologies. Scott's going to talk today about API management. Scott?
Thank you. So change has a considerable psychological effect on the human mind. To the fearful, it is threatening, because it means things may get worse. To the hopeful, it's encouraging, because it means things may get better. But to the confident, it's inspiring, because it means the challenge exists to make things better. This is a talk about change. This talk about change is going to affect everybody here, because fundamentally it's a change in IT. And we're the people of IT that are about to be engulfed within it. And in the end of this talk, what I'm going to ask every one of you is, are you going to be the fearful, or are you going to be the confident? I actually don't really care about the middle ground. So the basic thing, the basic change that I'm talking about isn't really, in a way, that different. The basic problem that we've had in IT for many, many years hasn't changed, really. In the last 40, 50 years, it comes down to access to information. So we've got data, we've got applications, we've got this tremendous resource available to us. How do we get access to it? How do we fundamentally get it out to wherever we are, regardless of whether we're in an organization, or we're outside, or maybe we're sitting in a Gartner presentation like this? So how do we do that? But the thing is that it's not actually the IT that's changing particularly. It's things on the outside, things that are outside of our control that are fundamentally starting to change. And if you look at it, what this change really comes about, what's starting to drive it, are three really important things. And number one is the interconnection that we're seeing everywhere. We're not just building websites now that are beginning to go out there and connect up to, our customers or our business partners. We're starting to build entire webs that are highly interconnected, with affiliate websites, with authentication websites, with different kinds of properties that begin to integrate all of this together. There is an unprecedented amount of interconnection starting to be done now. The other thing is cloud, of course, which is one of the big topics of this whole session and what you're seeing in Gartner these days. Cloud, whether it's going out to Salesforce.com, absolutely fantastic sales, software as a service application, or whether you're actually going out and starting to make use of something like Amazon's EC2. The same problem exists. We can't operate these things in a vacuum. We actually need to integrate. We actually need to be able to take these fundamental resources and be able to pull them back in to our own existing data and our own existing applications. And how are we going to do that? And the last one I think is the most important of all of them, because it's really about mobility. Every single one of you here has a smartphone in your pocket. Every one of you has tremendous computing power that we couldn't have dreamed about 10, 15 years ago. And late Mr. Jobs and all of his people at Apple, of course, and certainly at Apple, will continue to build fascinating gadgets that we must have. And they're going to do a tremendous amount of change. They are going to drive change that is unprecedented. And more than anything else, this is the crux of change. This piece of mobility right here. So the good news, though, is that you already know the underpinnings of this change. You already fundamentally know where it's coming from. I'm not going to actually ask you too much in terms of extending what you already know. It's SOA. It's about SOA, really, how we're going to deal with all of these things, how we're going to deal with interconnectedness, how we're going to deal with cloud, how we're going to deal with mobile. It turns out that the fundamental precedent, the fundamental principles of SOA are all exactly what we're going to use to do this. But of course, SOA has become one of these interesting words these days. It's become very loaded, of course. And even, Gartner's very own Ann Thomas Maine said very famously that SOA is dead. SOA dead? No, not dead. If you think that, actually, if you think it's truly dead, of course you misunderstood what Ann said quite a while ago. But in fact, SOA really needs to change. SOA needs to fundamentally go through a metamorphosis to be able to deal with these forces coming into us. The fact that we're interconnected now, the fact that cloud is coming in, the fact that everybody has mobile devices that they want to actually access, the mission-critical data that you run your business on. So SOA needs to change, and really that's what this whole thing is about. This talk is about change, this talk is about how SOA is going to change, and what are the technologies that are evolving these days to actually cope with this change. So before I get into that, let me tell you a secret, and this is kind of interesting, okay? Because the secret is this. It's a gold rush. And I whisper that because whenever there's a gold rush, it means there's opportunity. And you really don't want everybody to know about it. But the fact is that whenever there's one of these gold rushes out, it's a great chance for you to succeed. It's a great chance for you not to be fearful, but to be one of those confident people. And the real secret to that whole... Oh, somebody forget to turn their phone off? Yeah, it's very distracting, actually. I mean, okay, we'll try this again. But, you know what? I think this is me, actually. I apologize about this, folks. I think, yeah, I actually have to take this. This is actually important. Oh, just give me 2 seconds. Okay, I promise. It's only going to take a minute. Yeah, hi, Scott Morrison here. Oh, listen, this is a terrible time. I'm in front of a whole bunch of people here. There's 250 people here trying to learn about change and how SO is going to change, how SO governance is going to... Oh, I did promise I would do that, didn't I? Okay, well, listen, bear with me for a minute. It'll be in your hands in a minute. Folks, I gotta take this. I truly apologize. Just give me a moment. I've got an app on my iPhone, fortunately. I've got to get a quote in. It's the end of the month, and actually, obviously there's, deadlines and things like that, and we've got to make our quarter. But I have a quote app. It's only going to take me a moment to make this go here. So give me a second. I'll just find it. Yeah, we wrote this thing a little while ago. It's absolutely fantastic. It'll actually let me run a quick quote here. We have a couple of products. Api Portal is the one that this customer wants. Really, hopefully I'll get a chance to tell you a little about that. We're going to do 2 of them. One of them specifically going to be for redundancy. Just give me a moment here. Discount. This is this is a government customer, so they buy a lot. I'll be generous and I'll give them the big 5%. Okay, fine. That should keep them good. Now, recipient. Just a second. Okay, good. Yeah. Now listen here. This should be fine. I'm just going to submit this really quickly. 2 more seconds. Got it. Okay. It's going in. So here's what's going to happen. This is actually going to go to my CFO. He's going to go through it. He's going to look for it, make sure I've dotted the I's and crossed the T's and everything like that. And we're done. Okay. Apologize for that. Now, if this seems like science fiction, of course, it might be PowerPoint, but in fact, we've got customers that do this kind of thing all the time. And the big thing that is actually the great enabler of this is a technology that you already have probably heard a lot about, APIs. And the thing about APIs is it's one of those words that we like to use again and again in computing. In this case, it of course means application programming interface. And it is that fundamental layer between an application and what a developer is doing. It's the contract. It's the piece that doesn't change particularly. And it is the great enabler that pulls everything together. Now, why APIs matter today, why they matter so much, is that they're transforming the web. And they are becoming that integration component that is really turning the web from a simple channel to get out to your customers, to sell widgets, to sell books, to tell people about what products and services you have, to actually being able to actually exploit entirely new channels, and to be able to deal with these changes, to be able to deal with all the stuff coming in all the time, whether it's from mobility, whether it's from the interconnectedness of everything, or whether it's from cloud as well. So where APIs are showing up is at the edge of the network. And at Layer 7, of course, we advocate that you put your APIs and you manage your APIs in your DMZ, because that's exactly where you're going to be interfacing. It's going to be your fundamental interface with all of your existing technology. So in other words, this integration point, this thing that is doing the new interconnectedness of the web, is all centered around this idea of an API. And the whole idea of an API, really, when you think about it, the reason it's starting to work is because it's leveraging the web. So ask yourself this, it's a very important question, is why did the web work so well? And the answer has always been extremely loose coupling. This whole idea that we can add new websites and new web pages constantly. In the half hour that I'm talking to you here, there'll be tens of thousands of new web pages will suddenly go live, and you don't have to know about them. You can go find them when you need them. Another 100,000 might go dark in the next 24 hours. It doesn't matter. You don't need to know about that. That very fact that you don't have a coupling between your browser, the client, and the other technology is a tremendous thing. And that's very, very powerful. Now, of course, the naysayers and everybody else are going to say, Scott, this is exactly what you were telling me 10 years ago when SOAP was coming out. The whole idea of loose coupling, SOAP, we were going to make the whole world talk to each other and everything was going to be fine. And to that I'd say, well, you might have me there, but let's look at the roots of SOAP. Let's look at what SOAP was really about and what worked and what didn't work. in SOAP. So imagine that I'm sitting there at my laptop, in fact right here, and I'm trying to get access to some kind of information service using SOAP, okay? And that server right up there has, let's say directory information, and I want to find out about, my directory. So what I'm going to do here, just bear with me for a moment. I'll quickly bring up my, my main page here, my background, and I'm going to use my IDE, which is IntelliJ IDEA, which I actually really like. No pitch here or whatever. I don't own any stock in the company. I just happen to be a fan. It's a great Java IDE. I'm going to pull it up. Okay, we're going, and okay. Let me stop for a minute, because it occurs to me that what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to bring in some libraries to reflect on a WSDL and auto-generate a bunch of Java code and integrate that in, and this is going to take a while. And you know what? I've got 19 minutes and 26 seconds left, and I think I might use that whole thing in doing this demo. So you know what? I'm going to do something a little different. Let's instead go to another kind of technology that you guys are very familiar with. You've probably used it already today, the web browser. Okay? This is the new IDE right here. Let me pop it up here. Hold on a second. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to try to do exactly the same thing I was doing, an information retrieval, okay? So let me just type it in right here. I'm going to go against this particular URL at layer 7. I'm going to get person information, name equals Scott, that looks good. Okay, go. Well, it worked. It was that easy. I didn't need an IDE, I didn't need libraries. All I needed was a URL, and I can suddenly get all of this information. This is low barrier to entry. This is truly the thing that we've always been looking for. Let me tell you, as a developer, developers are lazy. We don't want to do all this stuff. We don't want to sit and pull in all sorts of different technologies that are complex and going to stop me from just getting the job done. My job that I'm trying to do, the problem I'm trying to solve, isn't really a problem about communications. It's a business problem. It's an application problem. The stuff about communications is just a necessary evil. And if I can do it really easily without an IDE, without just fiddling around and testing like this, that's tremendous. That's friction-free, that's frictionless. And that's the kind of thing that wins out in the modern world. It may not be the best solution in the world, there may be things you give up in terms of formality and rigor. But the thing is simple wins today. And this is one of the great changes that's coming up. Because simple really leads to agility, which is one of course, those weaselly words that people use all the time in computing and don't really define a lot. But the truth is, a lot of the time, agility is really just about being very high performance and being able to get things done easily without a lot of barriers in the way. People hate barriers in computing. People hate friction. If you can remove the barriers and friction, things will happen and you will get agility out of it. So not convinced yet? Let's dig more into SOAP. Let's look more into what it's really about. Let's take a look at some of the XML. Now those of you who know XML might look at this and say, good God, what is that? This is actually legitimate XML. This is well-formed. It's a valid piece of XML. It's machine understandable, but it's absolutely not human understandable. I have no idea what this means. And that should scare you, because I've been working with XML for years, but the truth is, this is one of those torture tests that you run parsers through and such. But the very fact that you can do stuff like this really basically says a lot about the nature of XML and the complexity of XML. I've built a lot of my career doing stuff with XML. I still love it. It makes tremendous sense for a lot of different applications, as does SOAP. But the problem is that it's become very complicated, and it's making our tools complicated. Here's an alternative. Here is an alternative. And it's the idea of JavaScript object notation, also known as JSON. Basically what it does is it just strips out what we really needed out of XML, which was really simple. Structure, hierarchy, metadata. That's it. Don't give me anything else. Don't give me pointers. Don't give me entity references. Don't give me even schema. Don't give me any of that stuff. I don't really need it. All I need is structure. I need hierarchy. I need metadata. So really what it's done is that it's giving you structure. It says, you know what? After a blue ball, you can have up to 2 red balls. And underneath a red ball, you can have 3 or more green balls. Structure, hierarchy, repeated elements. It has name-value pairs. So for every value I've got, I can name it, which gives me metadata. It says, this is a person. His name is Scott Morrison. That's the stuff that 99% of XML applications actually really needed. But the difference is, JSON is incredibly simple. You've already seen it. I showed it to you just a moment ago. This is the rendering in JSON of that data that I was getting back. My name, my address. But I also have repeated elements in here. I have multiple phone numbers. I've got the sense of hierarchy and lists and repeated elements. And it's incredibly simple to use. It's obvious what it is. But more important is this. JSON is JavaScript. JSON is quite literally the object notation within JavaScript, which means there's a natural binding to a higher level language. The reason JSON has taken off is simply because so many browser developers found XML really a pain in the butt to use. And this stuff was trivial because there was a natural binding. You would just render it and you didn't have to think about, what the high-level object mapping to a low-level XML structure or anything was. You didn't have to start navigating DOMs or anything like that. That stuff is all too hard. It was very natural. Yes, we have the same thing in XML now, but it took years to get it right. It's complicated. You have to pull in other libraries, and it just doesn't work that effectively because of all the other stuff that's in XML. The thing about JSON is it's trivial. It works in JavaScript, and the binding into other languages, which admittedly you do have to bring libraries into, but the fact is, because it's so simple, it just works. It's very, very easy. So the XML to JSON transformation, more than anything else, underlies, I think, the giant trend that we're seeing now in the API world, which is this move from highly complex to very, very simple, stuff that just works. From highly standardized, where we spent years, and I was one of those guys who sat in rooms like this, hammering out what the standards looked like as an editor, as a contributor, as an author, to instead something that's very informal and whipped out. From vendor-driven, again, guys like me who are sent to, all over the world to hammer out the standard, to grassroots initiatives. Barriers to frictionless. That's the theme. That's the theme we see through all of this. And nowhere is it typified more within the transformation of moving from XML to a very, very simple object notation like JSON. So in the greater scheme then of SOA, what about governance? How is this actually starting to affect governance? Because SOA governance is something that we think about a lot. And in fact, I work for Layer 7 as a CTO, and we're a Magic Quadrant leader in the governance space. Well, governance, it turns out, is going to change as well. And we can get an idea of that by simply looking at a few different things, a few real examples here. Number one, let's look at contracts. Here's the old point. Here's WSDL. Now, is there anybody out there that likes WSDL a lot? Do you love WSDL? Who loves WSDL out there? Okay, there's one. There's one. Yeah, you must be really, maybe you're a good friend of Sanjeev who wrote it or something like that. But the truth is, you know what? WSDL is hard. WSDL does the job, but it's tremendously complex, and there's an awful lot of stuff in there. So wouldn't it be nicer if we could, in fact, do something simpler? Like, just do this. Write a web page. Wow, we can write a web page. A lot of us have blogs and things like that. We've got wikis. What if we just had a simple template that said, this is how you use the API. This is actually what the contract is. And not only that, not only does it tell you the parameters to go in, the order to put them in, the limitations maybe on values and stuff, it usually probably just gives you a little snippet that you can copy and paste in your browser and test the API. Ooh, we couldn't do that, so couldn't we? This is a big step forward. And it's a big step forward simply because it's simple. It fits within our model. Now, design time governance, of course, is something we talk about a lot. And as you start to evolve into a very sophisticated SOA-based organization, you need to think hard about design time governance and registry repositories and things like that. But the problem with these things, of course, is there added complexity in that. So, quick question. Is there anybody here from Las Vegas who's actually just come in locally here? Not many, pretty much not anybody, which means we've all come in, we've all probably flown in from other places. I fly in from Vancouver. And that means that, sometime next week we're all going home, we have to do expenses. Who's looking forward to doing their expenses? Yeah, didn't think so. You know what? Most developers look forward to using big reg reps the same way we look forward to doing expenses. They're very necessary. I know why they're there. We try to make them as simple as possible, but they're necessary evil. The truth is, in a lot of things, the whole idea of the new design time governance and the new SOA governance is that instead what we should be doing is thinking about the tools that work for us, the tools that we like and flock to for all of our productivity, which means things like portals, wikis, forum, blog, email. These are tools that we can't live without. So why don't we overload these? Why don't we instead start to use these to actually enable this whole greater new style of new web governance that we're starting to come out. Now, what about runtime governance? Because, of course, governance is also about actually the enforcement of runtime. And the funny thing about SOA governance has always been that people think, well, I've got to start with design time, do runtime later. I'm in the business of runtime. I build gateways that you put into your edge of the network and actually manage API access and service access and things like that. And I've always said, you know what, the rules are only good if you've got something to enforce them. And day one, first day you put one of those services out there, you better be doing some kind of governance on it. You better be actually protecting that thing, because that is really important. Because the people on the outside do not honor your rules. They do not necessarily do what you want them to. So let's take a quick look then let's drill down into WS security, for instance, which is an aspect, of course, of runtime governance. This is what we do with SOAP messages if we want to secure them. And here's a very, very simple SOAP message, just to get stock price. I mean, it's the canonical thing we've been talking about for 12 years now, getting stock quotes and things like that. I'm gonna through the magic of technology here, what I'm gonna do is very quickly transform this into a secure version of this message. Here we go. Whoa! That's huge! All I wanted to do is encrypt the body of the message. All I wanted to do is protect the fact that I didn't want any of you to know that I was making a stock trade on ABC. And all of a sudden I get this? This is crazy! Here's an alternative, okay? Let's think about this in terms of the new SOA, okay? And the new approach to SOA and APIs. I'm gonna go back to my, my browser here, and let me, this may take a moment, okay? Let me insert, and where's the S? Where's the S? Oh, right, QWERTY. Okay, there it is. Here we go. Here we go. Wait for it. It's coming. It's coming. Look good. Ah! I just did the same thing. I got exactly the same effect. In fact, I got better because I protected the whole message. For something as simple as the price of a letter S, okay? You know what? It took us years to get SSL and TLS right. We got through three versions of SSL alone until we got it right. It's complicated stuff. But you know what? We do have it right now. This is actually the basis of most good security within the internet. So moving to things like this, simple security models like this are really what the future is about. So what about identity and access control? So think about the tokens that you use to actually get in and actually access some kind of service, okay? Could be username and password, it could be a digital certificate. I want to look at one SAML, for instance. We use it for single sign-on, federation all the time. I love SAML. I actually gave a talk with Eve Naylor a little while ago, who's one of the people who really built SAML and that. Very, very smart lady. SAML is great for doing a lot of complex things, but it's not necessarily what you need for something simple like this API stuff that I'm talking about. So the move now is actually towards something called OAuth. And you know what I'm going to do right here? I'm going to bring up a couple of my assistants here. And I'm going to show you in 3 minutes what OAuth really is about, okay? This is going to go from buzzword to a solid idea, a solid concept in your head here. So I'd like to introduce, Alex right here, who's in marketing, and Eurus right here, who's one of our SEs. And I'm going to show you how simple this is. It's so simple, we can get a guy from marketing to actually, do OAuth. So welcome you folks. This is the OAuth demonstration. So here's the scenario. We're in Las Vegas. What do you do in Las Vegas? You drink. You drink a lot, okay? So Eurus here is going to be my bartender, okay? Eurus is protecting the crown jewels of the bar, the drinks, okay? So he's got a resource here, drinks and that, and he's going to protect them. He's going to mix drinks and everything like that. Eurus is a great bartender. Tip your bartender, by the way. Good guy. And Alex here, he has a slightly different role. He's actually going to work, for me to get drinks. He's the waiter, okay? He's my waiter. So let's try this out, because I've been up here for 23 minutes or something like that right now, and I'm getting a little parched. So waiter. Yeah, I'd like a drink, please. Could you get me something? Here, I'm going to give you my credit card. Could you please go get me a drink? I would appreciate just a Perrier would be great. I don't want to get lightheaded up here while I'm here.
I'll take a Perrier and a Ferrari.
What? Hey, stop! Hey, give me that back! Whoa! Okay, this is a problem. This is the problem. This is not going to work. Of course, we do this every day, but this is a problem. So let me think of a different way. We're gonna do this a little differently. Okay? You're a good guy, but you know what? I'm gonna open up a tab. So yours, I'm gonna open this tab with you, okay? And
it's tab 123.
123. Okay, great. I got a tab now. So waiter. I'd like a Perrier this time, okay? And I'm tab 123, okay?
Perrier on tab 123.
Huh. Well, this seems to be working pretty well. I've got a tab open, and tabs they're not authorized to actually do anything but actually get a drink.
Beer on tab 123.
I haven't done anything, but you know my tab number. This is a problem. What am I going to do now? I've got a tab, but of course, any one of you could be using that tab too. So while I've protected my credit card number, all of a sudden I've substituted it for something else which is fairly valuable. Now, admittedly, it's limited, okay? You can't use it for a Ferrari, but of course, you could all be drinking Perrier on me, which I don't necessarily want. I mean, my CFO, when he got the 250 Perriers, I think he'd be starting to complain. So we've still got a problem. We're not there yet. So let me try something different here. We're going to do our third attempt to actually do a secure transaction between the three of us. So again, I'm going to bypass my friend here. Just bear with me. I'm actually going to set up a secure transaction here. So Eurus, here, I need to give you my credit card first. We're going to create a new tab here, and you're going to give me a token back. Excellent. Okay, so I have a token back here. Thanks to SAP for the cards, by the way. Oh, I'm not going to show you my card because this is like a poker game, and you know what do you do with a poker game? You hold your cards close to your chest. And that's what I'm going to do here. So I've got my card now, okay? So I've got my token, and I'm not telling anybody what my token is. And so what I'm going to do now is try to establish a three-way trust. So waiter, come on over here. I want to establish some trust between the three of us. I'm going to give you this card, okay? And I want you to go and close the loop on my new tab here and get yourself a new tab. So what he's done is he's used something called an authorization token. It's a temporary token to set up three-way trust. And now what you see is the bartender has taken that, looked at it and said, okay, obviously there's an association between Scott, who set up a tab, and this particular waiter. Not you, not that guy with down there who knew about number 123. It's a direct association between all of us. And so he's taken that and given a new card to Alex, the waiter. That's called an access token, okay? And Alex is going to hold that. He's not going to show it to you. He's not going to show it to me because it's none of our business. But it's there to essentially establish that trust. That's the magical key. And that's the magical key of what OAuth is about. So now when I say, waiter, come on over here. I'd love a Perrier. I am dying over here. You know about my relationship and you've got my access token there.
There you go. Yep.
Perrier, this is good. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is OAuth in 3 minutes. That's exactly what OAuth is about. Really, it's a very much simpler way of actually doing delegated trust between different entities. And the reason that there's a lot of back and forth there is for exactly the reasons that you saw. It's important to set up a three-way trust, which is why you hear it called three-legged OAuth a lot. Of course, OAuth is evolving quite a bit as well, and it's becoming quite a bit more sophisticated and being used for other kinds of things, other kinds of authentication and authorization. So let's look again at what SOA governance was about. So old governance, you know, the mantra, people, process, technology, that's something that has been drilled into our minds for many years now. But what about the new governance? What is the new governance? True. You know what? It's people, it's process, but I got a lot of technology. And you know what? I want to use my technology. I want to actually use the technology that I've already got. Because the fact is that good governance is still fundamentally built on, you know, the old superstructure, the old buildings, the old edifices that have been around for many years. In this case, of course, you know, Sir Charles Barry has put together the Houses of Parliament. But exactly the superstructure that you've been building in your organization for SOA has to be there. But your actual implementation of governance, the actual day-to-day governance, is different, of course. And that's where we're starting to move from things like WSDLs to wiki and blog as a way of doing documentation. Discovery, we used to do reg reps and things like that. We still do in the right cases if we're doing things like SOAP messaging. But in this new enterprise web that's all about APIs and that, we're doing something called search. How exciting. Try it. It's a good thing. For approval, we used to have governance platforms and that, but email, we all use email. We use it all the time, so let's leverage that. Enforcement doesn't really change, which is a good thing, because I'm in the gateway business. Gateways are, there before, gateways are there in the future. And you're going to see a bit of that in a few moments. User provisioning, basically IAM systems, identity and access control, management, so people can do password resets and that. But you know what? The web taught us about how to actually start to reach out and deal with other people and deal with other constituencies through portals. And so the leverage of portals is another thing in this new governance that we're starting to see. And then finally, community, which in the old thinking of governance was, what is that? What's community? Community is the organization. But the truth is, community matters more, as you're going to see in a moment, in the new governance and the new web API approach. And for that, we're using things like forums. So really, more than anything else, I'm talking about here the new way to manage. The new way to manage your APIs and services, and a new way to manage, the computing resource that you have. But what I haven't talked about yet is the new people to manage. Who are these new people? Who are they and what are they doing? And nothing typifies this more than this ad right here. New Yorkers have probably seen this if you ride the subway a lot. MTA, the company that does the subway, started putting these out to basically promote one of the things they did with APIs and mobility. And they said, basically, we're not going to go out and build our own iPhone apps and iPad apps and Android apps. There's too many different variations. It's a pain. You've got to get licenses from Apple. You know what? Instead, we're going to create APIs that give you access to our schedules, geolocation information, all of that, and just let the world do it. And you know what? The world did. People did it in their basements, they did it in their spare time, and now there's a whole plethora of different apps out there. This, I think, typifies exactly the kind of thing that's going on. That APIs become an integration point. The web, all of a sudden, isn't just about websites anymore, it is about integration. So this is the thing that we thought about a lot at Layer 7. How do you manage these people, but also how do you manage groups that you have affiliations with? Or even how do you manage groups that are internal into your own organization? We thought a lot about that at Layer 7 and started to realize that more than anything else, we have to think about how technology is changing. And really, there's a great quote that technology is really dominated by two types of people. Those who understand what they don't manage, and those who manage what they don't understand. And that, of course, is Putt's Law, which came out in the 1980s and is as valid today as it was 20 years ago. So the thing we've got to ask then, the thing we've really got to ask is, how can you understand completely but manage effectively? How can we bring those things together? And hopefully through this talk, you're starting to understand how change is happening within the greater scheme of SOA and what you're going to have to do and how you're going to have to react. And at Layer 7, of course, we were thinking about what is the problem really with technology and how do we bring things together. And one of our big observations was people are sick of piecemeal solutions. They don't want to buy this infrastructure from company A and this one from company B and this one from company C. They instead want something to drop in. And that really informed fundamentally how we're coming out with a new product that we call the Epi Portal at Layer 7. And what it is essentially is all of those components that I was talking about of the new governance bundled together and put to work in conjunction with our, essentially award-winning gateways to runtime governance. So in this environment right here, where I've got my enterprise network and some kind of API services that I'm making available to outside apps, I've got my API gateway, which is really basically a border guard. It's there to enforce the rules. It's about runtime governance. It can deal with OAuth. It can deal with JSON. It can deal with SOAP. It can deal with Kerberos. In other words, it's there to deal with the whole range of potential scenarios. But then, an adjunct to that is what we call the API Portal, which brings together all those best-of-breed technologies that you know and already use, the wikis, the blogs, the forums, the messaging systems, all put together in a turnkey solution. It's very, very easy to operate that talks to that new developer constituency out there. Now here, of course, I'm showing them as external, but they could just as easily be internal. That could be a developer group that's actually within your organization, and probably 50% of the people who I sell to do exactly that. They're not out there talking to freelancers. They're not out there talking to third parties. They're actually using it to manage their own developers. So this is the new governance. This is the new SOA. And one of the things we did with this whole thing was make it very brandable for you, because APIs are going to be your new channel to doing business. APIs are going to be the new face of your company, and so you have to make it look like your company. You have to manage it as your company. And that's a very, very important part of the new SOA. So quickly to summarize and pull this whole thing together is that if I leave you with anything, it's the simple wins. Rest one, okay? There's always a time and place for SOAP messaging. There are tremendous applications that can only be done with things like SOAP messaging, with traditional governance. Those will not go away. But the bulk of applications on mobile are going to be REST-based. And the reason is because low barrier to entry. It is hard to do SOAP messaging on those kinds of devices. So that is a change you've got to embrace. That is a change that's taking place in SOA. The new enterprise web is fundamentally about this idea of APIs. It's about reaching out and integrating. It's about recognizing that the integration point of your organization is no longer inside, it's at the edge of your network. And that's where you have to manage it. So hopefully solutions like Layer 7's API Portal and its API Gateway will be exactly the kind of things that will get you there. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you again later in the day.